Welcome to List Off. I'm Ozzy.
I'm Nat, and today we will be listing our top 5 favourite cartoon dogs.
And this is animated dogs, TV and film.
We tried not to have comic book dogs, certainly nothing that was exclusively from the cartoon or comic book realm.
Yep. So this is animated dogs.
Animated dogs. Ozzy, would you like to kick off?
No, you start. What's your first one? What's your number 5?
Okay, my number 5 of my top 5 cartoon dogs is Huckleberry Hound, and that almost feels like a kind of quaint oldie one. But when I went to do the list, I threw out much more obvious ones, and I kept putting other ones in and taking them out. And Huckleberry Hound is one I kept coming back to as the sort of almost southern, almost kind of what seems almost like a kind of American sort of Yankee Civil War era dog that he seems to represent. And him sort of, I became aware of the song My Darling Clementine because of Huckleberry Hound, as well as like the Western and things. It feels like I think of that more often. It's had more of a cultural weight, Huckleberry Hound, I think, on me than many probably other more obvious cartoon dogs might have. I think of Huckleberry Hound a lot. He's from the Hanna-Barbera stable. He's a blue dog, which I guess, again, represents a kind of Yankee. I'm maybe thinking too much into this, but I sort of feel like he represents a kind of Yankee, kind of Virginian, kind of Southern American dog of the Civil War era. And I kind of, I couldn't not include him. He was sort of, I thought he would be like an also ran in my list, but then when it boiled down to it, he had to make the list. Couldn't leave him out. He's number 5.
That's a good one. It's a good one. I remember him being good in, what was the show that just had loads of them in? Was it Treasure Hunt?
Oh, yes. What was that called? Maybe it was called Treasure Hunt. Yeah, there was, wasn't there? What was that called? There was the Laugh Olympics. That was the sports one. Or Laugh Olympics.
Yeah, Yogi's Treasure Hunt.
Yogi's Treasure Hunt. Yeah.
He was good in that.
I liked him. He had his kind of broken kind of guitar and things, and he'd play always My Darling Clementine, and no one would like it and enjoy it. He wasn't a great singer, but I liked him and I respect him as a dog. Not that big a fan of real dogs, but I like a cartoon dog.
I'm not a fan of dogs really at all, but I like cartoon dogs. If you could have a cartoon dog as a pet, I definitely would. Although not necessarily one of the ones on my list. I like them as characters. Maybe
we should think about that at the end.
Maybe
we could think about what we would have as a pet if we could actually
pick one to have as
one of the cartoon.
Yeah, in a Roger Rabbit kind of mixed media kind of world. My number 5.
Mm-hmm.
My number 5 is one of the latest modern newfangled cartoon dogs. Is Doug from the film Up.
Oh,
if you remember, he's a dog that they find. He's like a golden retriever, and they bump into him in South American wilderness, and he has a translator collar that translates what he's thinking into words. And he's just one of those great Pixar characters. Everything he does is perfectly pitched. And that's the kind of, like, it's very real doggy apart from the translator. And
I was going to say, he's almost like he's got the thing Pixar do. He comes across much more like a real dog than a cartoon dog.
Yeah, I would have him as a pet. Probably.
As a pet,
he's a decent one for that. But he talks a lot, But
yeah,
and he's always chasing squirrels. But that's like the most dog-like on my list, and the second most recent as well. So Doug from the film Up.
Okay. My number 4 is another from the Hanna-Barbera stable. And I thought I'd try and spread these out more, but it's just the way they fell, is Muttley. Muttley from the Dick Dastardly and Muttley show. Dick Dastardly and his flying machines, the wacky races. Dick Dastardly's assistant, but he's always kind of got the upper hand. He knows, he laughs it off. He's like a hyena-ish dog.
Yeah.
He is, again, I guess he represents a kind of slightly anarchic dog-like character. But actually, but he's also quite chilled out. He finds it all funny, but it's like he kind of watches from the background.
Yeah, he was probably my favorite as a kid, actually. Like any show he was in, he'd be the best thing for sure. Like the thing that when he laughed, it was, the best, the absolute best.
He kind of feels like in a gang, it would feel like there probably often is someone like that who is just kind of amused by events and is just kind of like nodding along and being like, and also it's the idea that he's kind of a bad dog in the sense of like he's on the side of the villain.
Yeah.
Except for you never really get the impression that he's invested in any of the Dick Dastardly schemes, and he's just as likely. But there's a sort of, it shows us a kind of loyalty there because he's just as likely to end up falling out the sky, getting hurt. So there's a loyalty there, even though you don't get the impression he's got any investment in any of Dick Dastardly's schemes. He's just as likely to end up with some like wooden wings that he's trying to bat frequently just to keep himself aloft. And, he won't do.
He doesn't get the credit that he wants because Dick Dastardly is always saying, they're falling into my trap, and Muttley will go like, and he goes, trap, Muttley, ours, so he's always having to correct him,
Exactly. And even Dick Dastardly refers to him as you flea-bitten, cloth-eared hound. So it's like kind of, it's not even like particularly, it's not a good relationship. It's not a healthy relationship to be in, I think.
I guess that's a nod to the loyalty of dogs. They will be loyal to even the bad owners, and that's
exactly that is a good point. I think many serial killers had dogs.
Right, my number 4 is Eugene the Jeep from Popeye.
Good.
So this is the one on my list which did start in a cartoon strip, comic strip, but 60 years before I was born or whatever. So by the I've never read a Popeye comic strip in my life, but in the Popeye cartoons, whether they were ancient ones or Popeye and Son that was pretty new then, I guess, or I felt like it. But the Jeep was just always, me and my sister would just find the Jeep hilarious. It doesn't look like a dog at all. It's not a dog. It's a Jeep. They used to say, it's a bit like a dog, but it's more like a Jeep. And, it could say Jeep and it could make things disappear, I think. And
in my head, I think his nose is a cross, right? Is that right? It's the way it's drawn.
Got like a sticky out nose like that. I had a toy.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's a good addition. I like that. Yeah, but very much the role of dog he would play in.
He gets. I've seen the first. I went to check it out, and I watched the first one where he appears in the cartoons. In the Fleischer Brothers, cartoons. I think they're like 1930s or something, and he's left in a box outside Popeye's door, and he gets him out, and he's like, "Oh, a puppy," and then that's takes him inside, and that's it. That's the explanation. But the
Popeye is an underrated cartoon anyway. I think it's I like all of Popeye. I think there's something about it that just appeals to me, and he's kind of it's that, I guess in a way he's sort of superheroes before superheroes, isn't he? He gets extra powers when he eats his spinach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like all that stuff. I like the Fleischer Brothers Popeye cartoon.
I liked Popeye a lot as a kid as well. It seemed to be on all the time, and he has. I know they made a movie. What did they make the movie version?
I think it's about 1980.
Yeah, and then but they I read that they Jeep isn't in the movie, right? Jeep's not in the movie, and some of the Jeep things were like Sweet Pea has some of the Jeep characteristics, right? And then they were going to make another Popeye movie in the 2000s, and then they canned it. So I feel like he's slowly slipping out of consciousness,
Hmm.
but he was still a huge character when we were kids,
Yeah. I also like Popeye and Son. I imagine for Popeye purists, that's a bad cartoon. Because I had a lot of time for Popeye and Son, and it's very Beach Boys inspired theme tune that I respond to, and very much in keeping with the tone of the series. It's like, yeah, that's it, exactly the right kind of theme tune to have.
It was weird. Like Popeye and Son was definitely superior to Scooby Doo with Scrappy Doo, and
Mhm.
superior to Godzilla with Godzuki.
Sure.
All the same
Although I think all those
relationship.
characters get bad rap now. I kind of, as a kid, I always liked Scrappy. I had no problem with Scrappy.
Maybe he's
I feel
only
like it's the adult eyes looking at these people that grew up with Scooby Doo,
yeah.
being like, "Come on,
Where's the like
Scrappy, come."
'60s guys who are like this isn't the real Scooby Doo? I'm sure
Yeah,
we do the same thing now. But yeah, I especially like the Jeep in the Popeye in the Army series. Yeah,
yeah,
that was good. That was kind of like Popeye meets Mash. It was really good.
yeah.
A good show.
That's a good show.
Cool. What's your number? What one's up next? Number 3.
My number 3 is a great cartoon dog that could be a lot higher, and it is Droopy. I mean, like, just absolutely. Like, if this was number 1, I would totally understand it. Like, he is, he's always very, very sorry. He's sorry for himself. Sad sack dog. Um, Things happen around him. He doesn't influence much of what's happening. He drifts through life. In some ways, he's probably the dog on the list that I probably relate to the hardest. He's a kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say he's miserable. I think he's kind of things happen to him. He's not really, he doesn't have a lot of agency. But what he does have, he has a lot of charm and a lot of like warmth, despite the fact he doesn't give out a lot of warmth. But I think he sort of engenders a kind of warmth in you towards him. And he's from Tex Avery, I think, is Droopy. So I think he comes from an old school, but he's a more, I guess, one of the later additions, I think, to the sort of Tex Avery canon. And I guess that's about it, really. I mean, I have a lot of time for him. It feels like he could have been much higher, and I would have almost thought about when as soon as he went into my list, I was a bit like, well, we're probably not going to top Droopy, but I have with 2 others.
All right, let's crack on then. My number 3 is the most recent addition to the list. He's sitting behind me in the form of my children's toy. It's Dougie from the show Hey Dougie, which is a really good new kids cartoon for little tiny kids. It's kind of the first show that my kids were into when they were kind of 2 or something, or 1.5, I don't know. And it's written to entertain adults as well, but not in the way that some kids films are, like these are dirty jokes for adults, nothing like that. It's just, it has references, and the way it's like they've gone, if this is going to be funny, it could be funny for everybody, and they got the voiceover from Alexander Armstrong doing the super plummy person a lot like himself, but it that works well. But the main character of Dougie is very much my kind of spirit animal, being that he's he's a scout leader. Basically, he looks after the squirrel club, and he's single-handedly looking after all these kids, and I was looking after my kids and childminding and looking after other kids, and it felt I could Dougie was like someone to look up to, like because he was a lot more on top of it than me, and calmer and full of patience, and you aspire to be Dougie when you're looking after kids. So he's not the best character in the show, but he's very lovable and stoic, and yeah, like there's not much that my kids would watch on TV that I'm like, that's good, but Dougie is great.
Yeah, I've seen very little Hey Dougie, as you'd imagine. And what I have seen of it, you do kind of go, oh yeah, this is a good show. It's really well done. It's also very pleasingly designed, I think, Dougie. All the characters have got a really nice, almost it feels like, even though I don't think it is, it feels like it's based on some sort of children's book with a real kind of idiosyncratic kind of illustrator or something.
Yeah, no,
so it's got they're really nicely looking designed characters and a really good looking cartoon, I think.
Yeah, it's really nice. Look, it's all done in Flash. It's all done in Flash animation, which is generally awful. People, all the crap animation you've seen online was done with Flash, and Flash is so bad it's kind of slipping out of use now. It's not such a thing as it was, but they've done a fantastic job with that. I'm sure it keeps the cost low and the team in small numbers. When I was just checking this out, I wanted to check the name of the guy who voices Dougie, because all Dougie says is woof, woof. And he doesn't say anything else, but the guy who voices him does a lot of the voices. His name is Sander Jones. And I looked him up, and I have a Facebook friend in common with him. So I need to go and chase that up and be like, do you really know Dougie? I was quite excited about that, because there is, I think, no chance that
Alexander Armstrong.
Not Alexander Armstrong, this other guy, Sander Jones, who does Dougie himself.
He's another Zander, is he? The Zander Jones.
It's S, so I don't know if it's Sander or Sander. I don't know. It's a new name on me.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's not the same guy.
My number 2 dog is Spike from the Tom and Jerry cartoons. Most famous for being, that's my boy. And it's that, I think it's the kind of the pride with which he holds his son, who does very little, but will not let any harm befall him or befit him. The kind of fury he holds Jerry in. You don't even really get the impression that it's because it's a kind of cat and dog relationship. He really hates Jerry. Tom, sorry. He really hates Tom.
Yeah.
But I think it's that when I thought of cartoon dogs, he is one of the people you think, that's my boy. I think about that all of the time.
Yeah.
Spike's kind of impression it's made on me. And in the same way as saying that Huckleberry Hound is kind of vast. I think of all the cartoon dogs, that's the one I kind of think about the most. And I think it kind of sticks with you because it has got a kind of human element to it, where it is this dog who just loves his son so much. Yeah, because he's actually quite a nice character.
But he's a very tough bulldog, with a spiked collar and everything. He's a tough bulldog. He's very tough. He's scary to Tom and everything. But he has that. He's super soft and lovely to his kid. You think of him like holding him in his big paws and putting him down carefully and tucking the blanket over him and all that kind of thing. So he's a good character to see, and he's a tiny character in Tom and Jerry. Like he's in a few episodes here and there, but he really stays with you.
And it's another early one, I guess, for Tom and Jerry, but it's another Hanna-Barbera, kind of from a different era of the later ones. But they've got some good dogs, Hanna-Barbera. They really represent well their dog characters for me.
My number 2 is a crossover with your list. Can you guess which one?
Droopy?
It's Droopy. Droopy.
Good.
Droopy is a hang dog, basset hound from Tex Avery, Fred Quimby School, voiced by Bill Thompson originally. And it's just, that's the best. To me, that's like the best. Well, I think maybe my number 1 choice is the best voice, but you can't talk about Droopy without talking about the importance of voice acting in cartoons and stuff. Like there's 2 of mine that barely speak, but the best is when it's like the perfect cartoon voice acting, and Droopy just has that, you just think of him, like just that makes me mad. That kind of,
Yeah. I would say also Droopy would have to appear high on the roster of all cartoon characters, right?
yeah, but
Like
he's
he's
not
probably the top 10 of all cartoon characters.
for me, but for you. But he's not famous now. Like he's not. People don't know who Droopy is now. He's not a big star. We're not seeing the Droopy movie. You know, in 3D. He's not lighting up the world. I bet he's not big on Google Zeitgeist. He's very classic. He's understated. I don't know if I liked him as a kid, but I don't know if kids like him that much. I don't, you know.
I don't know. Like he was a star of cartoons, I think,
Yeah.
and so any of the stars have kind of got a special place, I think. I'm glad to see him on your list. I was actually expecting much more overlap that we haven't seen so far, but I wonder.
Well,
I
it's
wonder.
interesting. I don't. You've had a lot of Hanna-Barbera. I've I thought about them all, but I haven't actually put any of the Hanna-Barberas on my list. I think they yeah, they. I will see. We'll see what finishes up, but there's some good ones
Yeah,
there.
exactly. It's kind of. I think, given that both of us only have one choice left, we are leaving off some pretty major cartoon
Oh yeah,
dogs.
I think the biggest cartoon dogs are not the best cartoon dogs, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your number one?
My number one is Ren Hoik. Couldn't do it. As soon as you think of it, I went, well, it's number one. Genuinely, properly funny, laugh out loud, funniest cartoon dog. Crazy, mad cartoon dog. Sort of insane. He's a Chihuahua. One of the best animated cartoon dogs. When you talk about anarchy, he's not anarchy. He represents like fury, like anger,
Ray.
rage, and funny with it because he's coupled with someone who is the opposite of that, and it just makes him all the more angry. And as soon as you go, oh right, of course, yeah, right, immediately you go, well, number one. I couldn't put him anywhere else in the list and feel like I was giving an adequate place for him, other than it being in the top spot.
I've got to say here that my number one is also Ren Hoek from Ren and Stimpy. He just I didn't think of him straight off because I was like, I kind of went through from the top down. So I was like, Goofy, Pluto, Snoopy, these kind of characters. And then I was like, as soon as I kind of got down in my list in my head, and I was like, oh, what about more recent things? And I was like, Ren and Stimpy. It just was there as number one because I mean, I don't know how old I was when they came out, like 12 or something. I don't know, but that it was like nothing you've seen before. Because it was part of that kind of cartoons for older kids, for teenagers kind of thing, and Beavis and Butthead, that kind of era. But it was also like you'd think, seeing things you'd seen before. Unlike Beavis and Butthead, which looks like trash. I mean, it's got its charms, but Ren and Stimpy is one of the best looking animated 2D things ever made. It's right up there with the Tex Avery's, you know what I mean, and the classic Disney's and that kind of thing. So everything. I mean, the only thing is, if you go back and watch the episodes now, they're very slow. They're very slow. It's shocking, and they're long and slow. That's kind of shocking because everything that came after them, the kind of Nickelodeon and all those kind of, they kind of tightened it all up and everything, and pitched it more to kids. But so Ren and Stimpy is kind of slow, but it's just brilliant. I mean, he's all through from when it came out. Me and my sister would just we'd tape every episode, and watch them back in the week. We'd just be everything would be like, you idiot, smacking people with your giant hand, and Stimpy's rubbish. I mean, but that's what he needs to be. No one's going to put Stimpy in their top 5 list. I mean,
No,
Stimpy is rubbish, but that's fine. Like it's just fine for Stimpy to be rubbish. You need that, and
he kind of exists just to be a foil.
yeah,
He's just that's what he's for.
Yeah,
He exists because of Ren.
yeah, and I mean, John Quick-Falusi drew it and did the voice of Ren. Like, I mean,
I mean, it's also just, I'd say of the others, even though you'd say that's a funny dog, if I think of Ren Hoik, I'm nearly laughing.
yeah, it's just yeah.
There's something so funny about everything, from the way he's drawn, the idea that it's kind of, even the design of it even being a chihuahua, but it's so far away from a chihuahua.
It doesn't look anything like a chihuahua. In his like pot belly, with his little arms, with his massive hands, like little face with his little beak. Yeah, I mean, it's just, man. And the way he switches, not just from the rage, angry stuff, they're like, Stimpy, my old friend. He gets like really like, and he suddenly gets all really super nice, and it's just amazing. It's
I
amazing.
mean, yeah, I couldn't put him anywhere else.
No.
I mean, it's like kind of, it's the top dog, literally is the top dog.
And he's very much like standing on the shoulders of giants. You know what I mean? Like it's all of cartoon history that goes into making that, and it riffs on all those earlier things. The theme tune and everything. It's like it's a tribute to all the cartoons that have gone before. But if half of those cartoonists could see it, they'd have been probably horrified because it was gross and obscene and whatnot. But it's just the best. The absolute best. I'm really glad we've coincided on number one. That's great.
Yeah. Will it be the kind of thing that if I hadn't thought of it and you'd said it, I'd just have to throw my list out and go, okay, well, I'll bump all that down one.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. I think it's a consensus number one.
Consensus number one.
Which in list off terms means it is just the best one.
That's official.
It's official.
That's official. The best.
I think that's our first consensus number one. So it is ultimately, officially the best cartoon dog.
Top dog. Some of the ones on your, all of the ones on your list could have got on my list. They were all in my kind of
list.
Honorable mentions. Some other ones on my honorable mentions list is Doggy Daddy. Augie Doggy's dad.
Yep.
But much like Spike, him and Spike have the same shtick, but he's like he says that's my boy as well, and he's very proud of Augie, but he's not as charismatic.
On my long list, yeah, not as charismatic. I do use the phrase "okie dokie doggy daddy" sometimes. Yeah. I certainly think of it whenever I say "okay."
Yeah.
Okie dokie. It's there. Others that I was almost expecting to see. There's some which I thought would be high, but when you think about it, not a good cartoon dog. Dogtanian, not really a good cartoon dog. No. He's like a human. He's a human, anthropomorphized human character. I
reckon if I'd watched it more recently, there are characters in Dogtanian that might go like, oh, Porthos is good or something, but I'm not going to go and watch a Dogtanian to find out. I did love the show, but there's not someone in it that sticks out as like great.
I've got a lot of time for Scooby-Doo, but he didn't make my list. There's things like Gromit from Wallace and Gromit, except for I never really I don't know how much feel that warmly towards Gromit.
I really like Wallace and Gromit, but yeah, Gromit is not that. His whole thing is that he's very aloof and just rolls his eyes at the camera and stuff, and very Wallace is doing stupid stuff again. I love those first couple of Wallace and Gromit animations. I think they're phenomenal, and I would have liked to represent that, but actually I'm not crazy about Gromit. I did think about that one. I got Snoopy's not on the list. I mean, obviously he starts in a comic strip, but you like Snoopy when you're a kid, but he's not the star of. He's not what's great about Charlie Brown. So
yeah,
I'd have Woodstock on a bird list and Snoopy on a dog list.
Very much so, I understand.
Although, do you know what? Snoopy's brother, brothers are pretty great. They wouldn't quite get top 5, but like Olaf and what's the Mexican one called?
Yes.
Oh man, they're good.
And I can't remember.
Olaf? Maybe that's Olaf.
One I feel like I would probably have had if I was older, but I can't really represent really. Like I know a lot of people a bit older than me have a lot of time for Hong Kong Phooey. And I like it. I like the I like the vibe of Hong Kong Phooey, except for I don't feel I can claim it. I feel you've got to be involved in kind of first wave
Yeah, we got a
Hong
bit
Kong action movie, I think,
we got a bit
to
of
be
reruns. My cousins who are older were into Hong Kong Phooey, definitely. Yeah, I didn't even think of that one because it just wasn't big in my childhood. Same with Deputy Dog. You know, Deputy Dog is funny, but I didn't get much of that as a kid. We didn't have that. You know.
same. I would respect them in anyone else's list.
Yeah,
because I can see it. I can totally see why you'd be into that.
and you got Goofy and Pluto who are in some good things, but no, they're just not.
Both considered. It's weird though, isn't it? Because also that's that odd relationship where, you know, if Goofy's a dog, what's Pluto? They're both dogs.
Yeah,
There's that odd kind of thing about the Disney ones that it's difficult to rectify.
it's like
that relationship.
It's like they're in the middle of Animal Farm, where some of the pigs have taken up the roles of the farmers, but some pigs remain pigs. That's an uncomfortable situation.
I find it an uncomfortable scenario.
And I think it's worth pointing out that all the dogs on your list and my list are male dogs. And I was thinking about that and thinking that, you know, dogs, women or female dogs are not well represented in cartoons. There's Lady and Lady and the Tramp, but it's not a film I never saw it as a kid. I'm not crazy about it. No.
I'd say, yeah. Again, I'm not crazy about that film, but I think that does have quite a good selection of cartoon lady dogs. If you're looking for some lady dogs, that's probably a good one to go for. But yeah, I think you're right. Poorly represented in my list, which I hope is because they're poorly represented in the whole animated dog world, and not just because I've made a incredibly sexist list.
Well, I mean, one of the two main dogs in 101 Dalmatians is a girl dog, right? But I haven't seen 101 Dalmatians for a long time. I have to convince the kids to watch it. They find films so scary.
I don't think they would make my list anyway. Like, I've considered these. These are all dogs I considered.
Yeah, Fox and Hound.
None of these were best in show for me.
Best in show. Best in show. Ren Hoek is what we're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Scooby Doo seemed like another odd one, but like it's kind of a yeah, sure. I like him.
Yeah,
time for him. I like him eating his sandwiches, or not eating his sandwiches and having sandwiches snatched away from him.
Ooh.
Like, kind of, you know, I'm kind of like, I kind of think with Scooby Doo, he's sort of part of the gang, and it's part of the. It's like he's just part of it. He's the star maybe of the Scooby Doo show, and yet it's the whole thing around him more than it's, you know, I've got time for Scrappy. But I think we made the right choice. We definitely, I think we definitely have. We've got the top officially best in show. Ren Hoek from Ren and Stimpy is the best cartoon dog.
Yeah. People should leave a comment. Tell us what dogs we've forgotten, because I'm sure we've forgotten some good dogs. Like, it's not easy to go through your cartoon dog mental Rolodex. I found it a hard thing to analyze in my head. And yeah, definitely let us know which dogs we've missed and which ones are your favorites. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe on YouTube, whatever. But basically, whatever you say, Ren Hoek is the best.
Yeah, I can't. You're not going to say one, I don't think, that's going to topple Ren.
No.
You might mention someone that's going to make a top 5, possibly.
Yeah.
But you're not going to. I don't think he can be toppled.
Yeah. Can't be.
I would say if you want to leave us a list, or your own list, or suggestions, a list we want to make, you can list that under your 5-star iTunes review. 5 stars for each item on our list, of course.
Yeah.
You have to put 5 because that's how many we put.
You could put 5. You could put 4 for a 5 thing. It's bad maths.
Yeah, bad maths. Do the maths.
All right. See you next time. Thanks a lot.
See you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.